Hi everyone, welcome in. Today I just wanted to do a recent reads video and talk about what I've been reading lately because I've been reading some really good stuff recently and I wanted to share it now because this might actually be the last video that I film before the move to Germany. I am so excited. We are currently 11 days out from our flight and we are deep in the moving process and packing. Everything is kind of in shambles, including my brain, but I did want to take some time and get this video done. The first book that I want to talk about is called Invisible Women, and this is about the gender data gap that we have in so much of our scientific research, medical research, safety data, city planning information, basically all of the research and all of the data that is collected and used to design our world and everything in it. We have a huge tendency to view men and male bodies as the standard default human. So anybody who is not a man or doesn't have a male body, the research and data being done does not include you and it does not represent you. And this was a horrifying thing to read. This is stuff that affects our health and safety and daily lives in a really horrible way. Some of the ones that stood out to me were the medical research, for example. One I remember specifically was aspirin. They give aspirin to everyone to kind of prevent heart attack and stroke or a second heart attack and stroke. But actually, when they did the research on women for the first time, they found that they have been proven to be ineffective or even in some cases harmful. But it's the standard procedure because it works for men. So they continue to give it to us and continue to do it. And that's horrifying. Another section of this book that was just really frustrating to read was the safety research section. Crash test dummies, for example, all have male kind of muscle weight distribution, center of gravity and stuff like that. And women are something like 70% more likely to die or be seriously injured in a car accident because all of the safety features, the airbags, the seat belts, the shape of the seats, everything like that is designed to keep a male body safe and not a female body. When they did do a study using female-bodied crash test dummies, they found that cars that had received a 5-star safety rating on the male crash test dummies now were down to a 2-star safety rating just because they started including female crash test dummies. It's horrifying. Is that not like the worst? The worst. Anyways, this book was really good. It also makes you think about how this is definitely the case for anyone else who is considered outside of that standard human definition. Like people who aren't white, people who have a higher body weight, people who have disabilities. Like the world is just simply only designed for one type of person and everybody else is getting so screwed. And it's really, again, it was a frustrating, horrifying read, but I do think that it was really important and really enlightening and something useful to keep in mind as we are moving throughout the world. The next book that I read was called The Gift of Fear, and this was recommended to me by a coworker. Hi Sasha. And it was really interesting. I really enjoyed it. The main theme of this book is that our human brains have been trained and wired and created over millions of years of evolution to pick up on things that can signify danger to us and then send us fear signals so that we're aware of them. And we're meant to use those fear signals to protect ourselves from the danger that our brain is noticing. But unfortunately in modern society, we tend to be a little bit disconnected from that. We tend to ignore those gut feelings and those instincts and write them off. And I thought that that was a really interesting and very valid thing to talk about because I know that I personally can't count how many times I've been in a situation that I felt uncomfortable, I felt unsafe, but also felt like I couldn't or wasn't supposed to act on those feelings. So I did really appreciate the main things that this book was saying and talking about. I did find some parts of it to be a little bit repetitive and sometimes the author was just taking a long time, using a lot of words, a lot of pages, a lot of chapters to, at the end of the day, just say the same thing. So I did skim a lot of this book, but there were parts that were very interesting, and overall, I think that this was a good read. So those, I think, are the most interesting nonfiction books I've read recently. Now for the fiction that I've read recently. The first book I want to talk about is The Lost Apothecary by Sarah Pinner. This book definitely has some mixed reviews, and I can totally see why. I get how this book is not for everyone, but it was for me. I really enjoyed this. This was everything that I love about a book, but it kind of follows two storylines. So one storyline is the historical one about a woman in the 1800s in London who runs an apothecary, but it's a special like underground apothecary that provides poisons to women who need to take care of a man who is hurting them or making their life miserable for whatever reason, you know? And then the other storyline is set in modern day, and it's about a woman who is supposed to be on her 10-year anniversary trip in London, but the night before they were supposed to leave, she found out that her husband was having an affair. And so now she's on this trip by herself, kind of rediscovering a part of herself, because she had always dreamed of going to England and getting her master's degree in history and becoming a historian or working in a museum or whatever. That was her dream that she kind of gave up to get married. And now she's in London, just kind of having this soul-searching journey. And down on the bank of the river, she finds a little glass vial that looks like it might have come from an old-timey apothecary, and she becomes very interested in the vial, and she starts using her like history research skills to try and track down where it came from and who it belonged to and what their story might have been. And obviously these two stories intertwine and kind of bounce off of each other, and it was just a really interesting book. I liked it. The next book that I want to talk about is one that I also really loved. This is probably my favorite one off of today's video. It was Juniper and Thorn by Ava Reed. This is a retelling of the Grimm's fairy tale The Juniper Tree, which, like all Grimm's fairy tales, is incredibly morbid and weird and really dark. And this retelling keeps in the spirit of that. This is not a cleaned up fantasy retelling. This is also very dark and bizarre and weird in the best way. The main character is one of three sisters, and their father is the last wizard of their region. And he has a very like power hungry relationship with his daughters. It's very toxic, very abusive. He basically locks them up in the house. They're not allowed to go talk to anyone or go into the city or do anything. But what he doesn't know is that his daughters have been sneaking out at night to go into the city and see the theater and mingle with the people. And the story really starts when the youngest daughter, the main character, starts having a little romance situation with one of the dancers at the ballet in the city. And eventually her dad kind of starts catching on to what they're doing and what's going on, and becomes a very dangerous situation for both of them and for the other sisters as well. And the story just kind of follows this whole situation like crumbling and getting very scary and very weird. Again, like I said, this is just bizarre in the best of ways, and I loved it so much. I highly recommend this. Another book that I really loved recently was Small Favors by Erin Craig. Erin Craig is the author of House of Salt and Sorrows, which is a retelling of the 12 Dancing Princesses, which I absolutely love because it was just so creepy and weird. And this book is also so creepy and weird, and I loved it. It's set in what I want to say is like pioneer times, and it's in this village that's like off in the middle of nowhere, and it's a very tight-knit village. The main character and her family are beekeepers, and I loved that, not just for the aesthetic of it, but also because it plays into the story in a really cool way, not just plot-wise, but like metaphorically. There's this really cool bee and hive motif that carries throughout. Basically, this village has this legend that there used to be monsters in the forest, and that the founders of the village kind of drove the monsters away and built the village, and everything's been good. Recently, there have been a lot of really weird attacks happening in the forest. You know, when they send out a supply run to go to the city and get supplies, people are being attacked. Then they send a search party to look for the supply run, and they get attacked, and some people think that the monsters might be back, other people don't, and there's kind of a lot of disagreement happening in the village about how to deal with this. How are we going to get supplies to last the winter? How are we going to keep our village together through this? And yeah, the story just kind of follows this village over the course of a year, in each season kind of going to shambles. Yeah, I just thought it was really good and really well done. And then the last two books that I want to talk about are actually Penguin Teen arcs. So thank you so much, Penguin Teen, for sending me these arcs to read. And both of these books are either recently out or will be out very soon, and they are also both YA gothic horror stories, which I love. Like, what can I say? I love a good gothic horror story. My friend Starzy was making fun of me because she was like, every time I go on Goodreads, it says you're reading some gothic horror story. Yes. Yes, I am, always. And I loved both of these books because they do that each in a very unique and very different way than what we're used to in that genre. So the first one that I'll talk about is These Fleeting Shadows by Kate Alice Marshall. It starts off as kind of your standard Gothic story. The main character is a girl who was born and spent the first few years of her life on her family's estate. Her grandpa owns this really big old creepy mansion, but when she was 6 years old, her mom, for some reason, just took her in the middle of the night and left, and they've never looked back. They've never been back to the estate. They don't really have contact with the family until one day they get the news that her grandfather has passed away, and in his will, he does not leave the family estate to any of the other like 10 family members that are all living on the estate with him and taking care of him, his children who are very close with him or his grandchildren who live there. He left the whole estate to the main character, who has not been there since she was 6. And there is a condition that she can only inherit if she spends 1 full year there without leaving the estate. And on top of that, if she doesn't do that and she doesn't inherit, the estate goes to a stranger, like it gets donated to charity or something. Like it does not go to anyone else in the family. If she doesn't do this, then everyone in her family loses everything they have. So obviously it's kind of manipulative and she has to do it, and while she's there she's trying to figure out why did her grandfather do this, like what's going on, and a lot of weird stuff is going on in the mansion and with the other family members. There's also a sapphic romance, which we always love to see. And as things progress, it just gets more and more weird and more bizarre, and it is really cool. I thought it was a really interesting and unique take on this genre, and I really enjoyed it. And then the next one that I want to talk about is called The Depths by Nicole L'Esperance, and this is a YA Gothic horror set on a tropical island. That is so cool and interesting, and what a unique setting for a Gothic horror story. Basically, our main character is a teen girl who does competitive free diving, and one day she has an accident while diving and she ends up drowning and being dead for like 8.5 minutes before they're able to bring her back. And this caused a lot of damage to her lungs that she's still trying to heal and recover from, and she can't do diving anymore, which is obviously an emotional loss and damage that she's dealing with and working through. And then on top of that, she's been forced to come along on her mom's honeymoon to this tropical island, which of course is the last place that she wants to be, surrounded by a bunch of ocean that she can't go diving in. And on top of that, the island that they're on is really weird. Basically, it's not a public resort destination. They only get to go there because they were personally invited by someone who knows someone who works on the island. There's one family that lives there that operates the lighthouse, and that family has 2 sons. The main character starts hanging out with them when she gets to the island, and you know, they tell her all sorts of weird stuff about the island, how they don't go outside at nighttime, how sometimes they hear music playing from somewhere on the island, and the main character has been seeing a little ghost girl in the jungle. The island is weird. The island is special, is what they tell her, and also that the island likes her. And I really enjoyed this. I loved following the main character while she tries to figure out what is the deal with this island. I thought that she was a really interesting main character, and she always kept the plot moving. She always kept something interesting going on. And the book in general, I just really liked it. It was weird and unique and full of all these twists and turns and interesting things, and like I said, such a unique take on this genre. So those are all of the books that I wanted to talk about today. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I would love to hear what you have been reading lately. Let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk to you. Like I said, this is probably going to be the last video I film before I get to Germany, which I'm so excited about. I do have some things pre-filmed, and I'm also working on a moving vlog, so keep an eye out for that if you're interested. But besides that, this is gonna be it pretty much until Germany. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked it, and I hope that I get to talk to you soon. Bye!